And we can see that Twitter, Instagram, and Apple, without looking at the name, without looking at the text, but we immediately give association that this visual is tied to which brand. Shrink it into a small setting. So you'll see that what Heineken does is that it has this complicated star, the Heineken word, and also the emblem. As it goes smaller and smaller and smaller, welcome back to this channel. Okay, so this opportunity we're gonna talk about logo. So I'm sure in our daily lives we've all seen logos, we've consumed with a lot of logos, we associate a lot of brands with a logo, and ultimately we do feel something about looking at a certain logo. So in that sense, what actually is a logo? So by definition, a logo is actually a symbol or other small design adopted by an organization to identify its products, uniform, vehicles, etc. So meaning to say how we draw association to a brand itself. So essentially, a logo is the face of the brand. However, it's also important to take note that a logo is not a direct picture of the brand itself, but rather it is a representation of the brand. So for example, if we are talking about Nike, they sell shoes, they sell apparels, but their logo is the Swish logo, and the Swish as in the Swish like that way, and it's not a clothes, it's not a shoe, it's not even someone who is running. So meaning to say it doesn't have to be a literal depiction of your product, but rather how do you want that certain icon or certain symbol to be an association towards your brand. So that is what logo is about, and how logo functions in a brand. So how do we classify logo by itself? Is actually there are a lot of clarifications and also there are a lot of classifications, but overall I would like to segmentize them based on these four big or the four main category. So what are of the more frequently encountered, and perhaps it's safe to say that is the most famously adopted, would be a logo type. So the term logo type and logogram come hand in hand in a lot of contexts, for the fact that some logogram needs a logo type to tell what the logo is about, and on the other hand, logo type sometimes is not enough to depict what the brand is, and therefore there needs to be a visual mascot to be in as a direct complementary. Nevertheless, actually they can exist one and another interdependent or independently. So if we are looking at logo type, so what do we define by logo type? Is actually logo that is comprised to words, alphabets, or characters. So for example, in the word FedEx here, we can literally read the word FedEx. IBM, you can see the word I, E, and M directly. Disney is a Disney. So it's a logo that is created with the alteration or the stylizing of characters, alphabets, numericals. So in that sense, that is what logo type is about. So next, of course, is logogram. So logogram is a visual depiction of a logo itself. So for example, if we were to take a look at the logo Apple, so you can see that the logo Apple here doesn't have the word Apple there, but we immediately associate this Apple as the brand of Apple itself. Then we take a look at, let's see the word, let's take a look at this perfect example of Microsoft versus the logo mark there, or the logogram. As we can see, the logo type is the Microsoft word there, as opposed to the Windows shaped icon there, which is essentially the logo mark or the logogram of Microsoft. So when we view the shape there, we not just look at it as a window, but we know that this visual represents this brand, which is Microsoft. The same goes for Twitter. So when we see this bird, we know that it's Twitter. Okay, and we can see that Twitter Instagram and Apple without looking at the name, without looking at the text, but we immediately give association that this visual is tied to which brand. So depending on the context, it can actually be used together, such as when you see the word Twitter and the icon here, or it can be independent, depending on how the artist wish to stylize the brand itself. Then we have this slightly more, I would say, institutionalized or slightly more formal way of presenting a logo, which is emblem. So emblem will be something that you actually encounter in a lot of public or corporate institution, which is more formalized. So for example, like state coat arms, country emblems, and also I think by now everyone should know what this Hogwarts logo is. Yeah, so you can see that. I wouldn't want to say that it's complicated, for the fact that of course certain brands do want to establish themselves as more prestigious, and more of the common shapes that you can find in emblem would be like a certain sense of security, like those kind of circle, shield, wing, and trying to be more expansive. And yeah, it's not surprising that you see the Harley Davidson logo here is an emblem by itself, not only because it has the text there, but actually it's kind of being compartmentalized in this shield kind of look. So that's essentially how we define it as an emblem, as and by itself. Alright, then last but not least, we have the combination logo. So how combination logo works is rather a tricky scenario in which, to a certain extent, the type and the symbol is actually interdependent to one another. Like for example, Burger King. Without the word Burger King there, it just feels like it's missing something, right? So this is more on combination logo, in which the logo type and logogram is more interdependent to one another. But also, we also have to acknowledge the fact that logo type and logogram can also be independent on their end, so long that people can associate what the brand immediately is. So in the case of Rolex, for example, without the presence of the Rolex word there, yes, there might be some difficulty in associating what the crown actually means, even that the crown can actually mean so much, a lot of brands. But once the Rolex word comes in place, then people can associate, so that crown is actually supposed to represent Rolex. Alright, so that's basically the classification of logo and the function of logo itself. So we determine, with such flood of logo, and we are very spoiled by lots of logos that we see every day, how do we actually draw association with logo? How do we draw association with brands? And ultimately, what makes a good logo? Alright, so I would say these are the 5 main considerations. So a bit of breakthrough is that, of course, we want certain logos to be relevant and appropriate to the context of the intention of the brand itself. So for example, if you're selling sports kind of a sports shoe, and also like things that are more sporty, of course you wouldn't want to make the logo to be more a bit too feminine, or you don't want to make it look too leisurely to a point where it feels a bit lazy. So that's the part of relevance and appropriate that we want to contextualize better. And you can see that, of course, another key part of using color is to draw out the psychology and the emotion behind the logo itself. So for example, bright, fun color scheme might work greatly for a candy store logo, but of course not a funeral home. So that is the part where it's not just about the visual or the decoration, but also the literal words or the logo type. The way that we name our brand actually matters a lot in delivering the energy and also the psychology of the brand itself. Then if we're talking about the text, it has to be able to describe, it has to be legible, or I would say readable, in a point where one look, then we understand what this brand is about, so that we understand how this brand is supposed to represent and resonate with the audience. Then in terms of memorable, timelessness, or versatility, this is a very tricky matter, because as far as a long history of brand goes, there are a lot of brands who actually remain loyal to their logo type or logogram, but there are also brands which are really thriving right now. They keep on to the trend, and they keep changing and adapting to their logo according to the public interest and how they wish their brand to be. So it actually depends on how you want to perceive your brand, whether you want it to be a conservative, or I would say like a more foundational level. So meaning to say you keep on to the foundation and you are not making significant changes to the logo as part of respecting the heritage, versus a young, driven, and also very spirited-minded brand which actually does not mind changing for the sake of appealing to the mass that you are targeting. So that's the part of being memorable or being timeless. That is actually the element of sensitivity here. In terms of the absence and presence of color, we have to be mindful that there are certain logo placement that is effective with the full color in place. So for example, if we have green, pink, and white, for example, within this one logo, of course it will look very striking, it will look very best. But do bear in mind that there are brands or sponsors which actually they only need one color. So for example, how well your brand will actually be recognizable if it's only in one color. So for example, it's in black. Can you still see the brand? If you can still see the brand or the logo, then good. But if not, you have a problem. So that's as simple as it goes. Then we also have the factor of scalability or versatility, in which this is playing part towards how certain logo is actually adaptable in response to various sizes and dimension. And in the era of now, we have a digital system where we see things in like big screen, small screen, and even tablets. This is where the idea of flexible visual system, I would say responsive logo, comes in place. So for example, if I were to give you a look of how the logo actually plays a part, how do we see the Coca-Cola logo here, which is supposedly like a very long text, to reduce it to a small icon? So you would see that certain logos are effective when they are being applied in their big setting and shrink it into a small setting. So you'll see that what Heineken does is that it has this complicated star, the Heineken word, and also the emblem. As it goes smaller and smaller and smaller, how do they actually determine to the one sweet spot that people will still be able to remember that this is Heineken? So it might be the case where the star is not enough. So the green color comes as a secondary option to let people associate that there's a red star and there's this green background, so people can think of Heineken. For Walt Disney, fortunately, they rely mostly on the type, the logo type, and it's a customized typeface. So in that sense, it will allow them to reduce the word to a very minimal, and people can still associate this stylized font as Walt Disney. So that's how we can play with brand association with the shape of the logo and also the naming convention of the logo. And last but not least, how we stylize the logo to fit with certain brand association, whether it's a fun brand, whether it's a serious brand, or whether it's an adaptable brand, or is it a long-lasting brand. But ultimately, a brand should be a representation of a logo should be a representation of the brand, but it does not have to reflect the product in which the brand has to offer. Like what I said, Warner Bros. Can be a media production company. It can be a lot of things, but ultimately you see the insignia or the initial WB. Yeah, it's just a WB. But what does it say to you? You can immediately think of Warner Bros. As a media production company because you've seen their products and what they have to offer. And with this WB, it gives you a direct association towards something that is so much more. So I hope this really helps to distinguish how you can use your logo as a symbol to get your brand known, and also it helps you to be more flexible in arranging what determines a good logo and how you can keep your logo versatile and also adaptable in various platforms, and also how you can allow your brand to shine using your logo itself. So the more customized it is, the more flexible it is, the more people can associate, so the better it is for your brand. So I hope this lesson helps, and once again, see you in the next class.